Good evening. My name is Nicole Guzman, and the topic for my final project assignment is an exploration of Gothic architecture. By definition, the term Gothic derived from the word Goth, Italian artist meant to insult the French architecture and belittle the style by naming it in reference to a barbaric tribe, the Goths. Gothic architecture developed out of Romanesque structures. The Romanesque style was characterized by broad and massive semicircular arches, thick walls, and closely spaced supports that create a feeling of security. The style seems to be bound to the earth. By contrast, Gothic architecture is more defined as confident and daring. It is characterized by the tremendous height of its buildings, which were a reflection of religious ideals and enthusiasm, of inspiration and aspiration. Gothic inspires spirituality. The picture depicted is the Basilica of Saint Denis, where the Gothic architecture all began. Characteristics of the Gothic style consisted of several different components. These components were tall, thin walls, pointed arches and vaults, ribs, flying buttresses, the rose window, stained glass, stories, the triforiums, piers, and pinnacles. The tall, thin walls were easily visible from the outside and inside the structures. Pointed arches can be visible on the outside of the buildings as well as the inside. Vaults were pointed arch impressions in the ceilings of these structures. Ribs connected the vaults and arches inside. There are two components of buttresses, the flying buttresses and the buttress. The buttress was the main support of the flying buttress. The purpose of the flying buttress was to resist lateral force on a wall outward to the ground. The rose window was large, circular, and was very visible from the outside. When seen from the inside, one can see the intricate details in color from the window. This window played a role in the illumination of the structure. Stained glass windows were installed throughout these structures and was used more than the rose window for illumination purposes. Like the rose window, the story's main purpose was to bring light into the building, just above the eye level, bringing in a feeling of fresh and light air. The triforiums are often located just beneath the stories. These are window-looking features of the building, except they are not windows. They are tribunes and are as thick as the inner wall. Piers were columns of support for the pointed arches. Pinnacles served the purpose to add decorative height and sustain the weight demanded of the flying buttresses. Although Gothic architecture derived from the Romanesque architecture, there are several differences between both styles. When comparing the previous image to this image, shown as an example of a Romanesque structure, very noticeable. You can see that the arches and spacing between are fairly broad and massive. With broad and massive arches, not seen in the previous example, but are seen here, are the stained glass windows style. Very noticeably pointed arches also consisted of arched and semicircular ceilings. Although Gothic architecture had its own unique features, the Gothic style was comprised of several different styles, the first being the early Gothic style. The early Gothic style was the beginning of the Gothic era, therefore it was the base style. In high Gothic styles, there was more of a focus on the intricate artwork that went into the building, as well as the impressionable heights. So, in other words, they kept trying to up their game with the style. The Rayonnant Gothic style made a bigger emphasis on the structures when it came to the illumination aspect of the architecture. Rayonnant comes from the French word rayonner, which means to shine. For this reason, in Rayonnant Gothic structures, it is common to find a lot more windows bringing in sunlight into the buildings. The flamboyant or late Gothic styles can be noticed in a lot of the rose windows of Gothic structures. The flamboyant style consisted mainly of bold, big flame-like designs in the buildings. Starting in France, the Gothic architecture influenced many other cultures across the world. This meant change, and there was constant change to the structures and the styles of the Gothic style. Ornaments and fixtures to exteriors and interiors hinted to new faith and new culture all around the world. I would like to show different buildings from around the world that were Gothic inspired. The first being where it all began, in Saint Denis, France. It was built by the 1140s, considered to be the first Gothic-style structure. It was rebuilt by Abbé Ségur. It was an important place of pilgrimage and a burial place for 10th to 18th century French kings. The Cologne Cathedral in Cologne, Germany took about 6 centuries to complete. The construction began in 1248 and it finished in 1880. It was severely damaged in World War II by aerial raids. It started restoration in 1956 and is now restored today. The Milan Cathedral in Milan, Italy also took almost 6 centuries to build. Construction began in 1386 and finished in 1865. This cathedral is known to be the fourth largest cathedral in the world. The Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, France is among the very famous Gothic buildings in the world. It was built between 1163 and 1345. This building went through several alterations and damages over the years, but the most recent alteration that took place in the 1990s. The Amiens Cathedral of Amiens, France was completed around 1270. It is famous for allegedly housing the head of John the Baptist. This building is also known for early Gothic sculptures. The Canterbury Cathedral dates back to the late 16th century and is also known to be one of the oldest cathedrals in England. It is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Canterbury Cathedral, St. Augustine's Abbey, and St. Martin's Church since 1988. As I stated earlier, the Gothic style architecture was carried throughout the whole world. This is a structure called Las Lajas Cathedral in Pasto, Colombia. The purpose of this cathedral was to commemorate the legend of the Virgin who appeared on a rock 45 feet above the river on which this cathedral was built on. If you have been given the opportunity to visit New York, you have probably passed by this amazing cathedral. This cathedral is called the St. Patrick's Cathedral, located right inside of Manhattan. The cathedral's construction began in 1858 and finished in 1879. It was built on the funds given by hundreds of immigrants and citizens. Archbishop John Hughes was inspired to build this church. It still stands today and just finished renovation. To many surprise, the Cinderella Castle located in Orlando, Florida is a prime example of the Gothic architecture. The inspiration behind the Cinderella Castle was sparked by the beautiful Neuschwanstein Castle located in Bavaria, Germany. I hope I have given you enough information to take away from this presentation. That way, on your next touristic outing, you may be able to spot out some Gothic architecture or features belonging to the Gothic style.